It was always on days like that, bland, institutional days, that the floor dropped out. I remember the smell inside the car. Dusty upholstery. A trace of Wendy's fries somewhere under the seat. School intercom static bleeding through the cracked windows. I was parked beneath the third lamppost in front of Jefferson High, the one that flickered when it rained. I used to wait there when Cindy stayed late for parent-teacher meetings. Never made a fuss. I was background, the man who brought the car around, who carried in the science fair boards, who signed the late slips when no one else remembered. It was April. Still cold in Spokane. The kind of chill that didn't leave even when the sun did show up. You could feel it in the concrete, in the steering wheel, in the long minutes that made you wonder what the point of waiting even was. And then the phone rang. Cindy mobile. I answered on the second buzz. Always did. "Hey," I said. "You almost done in there?" Her voice came through sharp, flat, and colder than the spring wind leaking through the vents. "I just inherited a large sum. Pack your things and get out. Now." I said nothing. She didn't stammer. She didn't backtrack. She didn't even clarify. Just silence. And then the line went dead. I stayed parked for 13 more minutes. I know that because the car clock blinked forward, minute by minute, while I stared at the same wet gum stuck to the pavement near the curb. I watched a father walk his daughter to their SUV. He kissed her on the head. She laughed. The door shut. The engine purred to life. And then they were gone. Like a family. Like a real one. When I finally drove home, I half expected the locks to be changed. She hadn't. That was the first mistake. If she really wanted me out, she would have made it irreversible. Instead, she left the door unlocked. A message in that, I think. She wanted me to walk in. She wanted me to see what she'd prepared. The kitchen light was on. Table cleared. No dinner in the oven, no signs of interruption. Just one stack of paper sitting dead center, aligned with the salt shaker. Divorce consent agreement. Voluntary move-out form. Acknowledgement of departure. NON confrontational. No attorney names. No official court headers. No timestamp from a notary. Just blanks where structure should have been. I'd seen tighter documents from middle school field trip forms. It wasn't law, it was theater. Theatrical cruelty. Just enough legitimacy to unsettle me. Just enough absence to leave the door open for a performance. But I didn't audition. I set my keys beside the sink, pulled out my phone, and photographed every page one by one. Slowly, deliberately, each corner, each line. Captured the envelope they came in. Captured the knife left conspicuously next to the stack. Nothing overt, just available. A prop. She wanted tears. A scene. Yelling. Bargaining. Maybe even a broken glass. Instead, I packed in silence. The bedroom smelled like her perfume. Always did. She sprayed it on the curtains. Said it helped her sleep. I left it untouched. Took out a small duffel bag. Folded 2 pairs of jeans. 3 button-downs, 1 coat. No mementos. No jewelry. No photos. I left the anniversary watch she gave me sitting on the nightstand. It had stopped ticking 2 years ago, anyway. In the drawer beneath it, I found my father's Bible. I took that. Not because I needed God. I just needed something no one had given me. Something that was mine before I was part of this family. The office was cleaner than I remembered. Almost like she'd already gone through it. The tax folders were rearranged. The desk drawer that used to stick slid open too easily. Files were missing. The will, hers, not mine, was gone from the safe. Another message. This wasn't sudden. She'd planned it. But she hadn't planned for my silence. I didn't leave a note. Didn't slam the door. Just opened it, stepped through, and pulled it shut with the same soft click I'd used every day for the past 14 years. The sound of a man coming home late and not wanting to wake anyone. Only now I wasn't coming home. I drove to the edge of town. Not far enough to be gone, but far enough not to be found. Checked into the Juniper Motel. Room 208. A queen bed, scratchy blanket, 2 lamps that buzzed when turned on at the same time. I left my phone on the bathroom sink. Screen down. Didn't even charge it. Then I opened my laptop and messaged my attorney. Subject: Sudden separation, need review ASAP. I attached the photos. I gave a timeline. I used words like non-binding, pre-litigation, bad faith. Words that matter when emotions no longer do. And then I sat on the bed and stared at the wall for hours. This wasn't revenge. I didn't scream. I didn't post online. I didn't call her friends and beg for intel. I didn't go drinking, didn't cry into some stranger's shoulder, didn't call my brother and ask for the couch. I did none of the things a man does when he wants someone to stop him from leaving. Because I wasn't trying to stay. I was restoring boundaries. The kind of boundaries you forget exist when your name is never on the mailbox, when your bank account gets merged but your presence doesn't, when her children call you by your first name, always your first name, even after a decade of rides, bills, holidays, and broken curfews. I used to think patience was strength. Now I know silence is stronger. When I lay down that night, the bed creaked like it hadn't held a body in months. The air smelled like bleach and old air freshener. I didn't mind. It was clean. It was mine even for a night. I turned off the light and closed my eyes. No one called to ask where I went. No one asked if I was okay. No one came after me. And in that absence, in that perfect, surgical silence, I found the first breath I'd taken in years that didn't hurt. The first sound in the courtroom was the turning of a page. Not a gavel. Not a voice. Not even the low hum of murmurs you hear on TV. Just paper, smooth, precise, final. I sat 3 rows back. Gray tie. Suit I hadn't worn since my mother's funeral. Cindy sat closer to the front, beside a woman I didn't recognize. Young, expensive hair, cheap confidence. The new friend, or the new strategy. Sometimes they were the same. The judge's clerk called the case probate, a simple confirmation of inheritance, a routine filing of paperwork. That's what she expected. That's what her tone on the phone had tried to force. The image of a clean break. Me on the outside. Her at the center. Money in motion and me already erased. But wills don't obey cruelty. And her father, John Kramer, was a structured man. A man who'd seen too many divorces, too many feigned loyalties, too many step relations melt under pressure. He told me back in 2019 that fairness needed rules. That money was temptation, and temptation demanded limits. I hadn't known he wrote me in. Not as an heir, not as family, but as a witness, an official observer of the estate's execution. The title sounded meaningless, ceremonial. It wasn't. The moment my name was read aloud, Michael Vance, listed observer, non-contesting party, authorized presence. Cindy's head turned. The blood drained from her face. She looked at me like I'd cheated gravity, like I was standing on air when she'd already cut the rope. Her attorney, younger than I expected, too slick, leaned in and whispered something, probably a challenge, an objection, a question about standing. But the estate's representative didn't flinch. "He's here by designation," she said calmly, "per the stipulations in Mr. Kramer's revised 2020 will." Cindy opened her mouth, closed it, shifted in her seat. That was the first crack. Then the documents came out. The will had conditions, specific ones. No beneficiary could use estate resources to destabilize or evict a legal spouse without lawful process. Just cause and fair support. Not just alimony, dignity. No theatrical exits. No forced power plays. No sudden reversals of the life built together. The paperwork she'd left me on the kitchen table, the voluntary move out, the unsigned divorce script, violated the terms of inheritance. And worse, the audit had already begun. The representative lifted a folder. Thick, heavy, bound with a red string, as if formality itself had come to court wearing handcuffs. "Your Honor," she said, "we've identified an attempt to transfer ownership of one of the estate's secondary properties, a cabin located near Lake Sammamish, prior to asset allocation and without trustee oversight." The judge leaned forward. "Was the transfer completed?" "No," she said, "but funds were accepted. A buyer was misled into believing the sale was lawful. Documents were forged. A signature was faked." She glanced at Cindy. The room stilled. Cindy's new friend whispered again. Faster now. Panic under her breath. Cindy didn't look at her. She stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Her mouth moved like she was chewing a nail. That was the second crack. My attorney, who had said nothing until then, rose slowly. "We have records of all communications," he said. "Emails, bank transfers, texts. We also have a list of assets that were tampered with during Mr. Vance's removal from the residence, which may constitute constructive fraud." He said it quietly, no flourish, just the facts. A file was handed forward. Photocopies of those staged documents. Dated, digitally time-stamped, paired with photos I'd taken the night I left, including metadata. The kind of proof that doesn't just support truth. It locks the doors against lies. The judge flipped through it, nodded, then turned to Cindy. "Do you have a response?" She cleared her throat. The courtroom waited. But nothing came. No denial. No counter-narrative. Not even a defense. She looked like she'd swallowed the wrong script and couldn't remember the next line. That was the collapse. The estate sale was frozen immediately. A restraining order on the Lake Sammamish cabin was issued. All assets under review. All transactions subject to approval. The inheritance wasn't revoked. Not yet, but it was muzzled. Gagged and tagged for surveillance. The representative handed me a packet before I left the building. My official designation. My access rights. My permission to review every action taken on behalf of the estate. "Just for oversight," she said. "Nothing personal." But we both knew everything was personal now. Back in the motel, I spread the papers out on the bed. The language was clean, precise. Each paragraph a quiet vindication of things I hadn't dared to name. Gaslighting, financial cornering, reputational manipulation. She hadn't just tried to erase me. She tried to edit the timeline, pretend I was never part of the foundation. Rewrite history with her as the sole architect of the family we built together. But the will was an anchor, and she'd tripped on it. I traced my name on the page. Michael Vance, non-contesting observer. Not glamorous, not powerful, but real, and official. A title no performance could undo. Then my phone buzzed. Blocked number. No voicemail. 5 minutes later, another call. Different number. Same silence. And then the text started. Not from Cindy. From unknown contacts. Area codes I didn't recognize. "You better back off. You already got out clean. Don't make it worse. You think court protects you? It doesn't." Each message was like a fingerprint left in the mud. Smudged. Clumsy. Too vague to prosecute. Too targeted to ignore. I screenshotted each one. Forwarded them to my attorney. He responded with a single line. "Build the file. Silence is leverage." So I did. I bought a burner phone. Registered it in my middle name. Created a new cloud account. Stored everything offsite. Encrypted. Double-backed. Time-stamped. I wasn't hiding. I was insulating. Building firewalls between myself and the storm I knew was coming. And it did. The buyer of the cabin, a man named Darius McClellan, emailed the estate directly. Demanding answers. Said he'd already put down $25,000. Said Cindy told him everything was above board. That the cabin was hers to sell. That her ex-husband was out of the picture. The estate responded formally. They copied me. And the realtor? She cracked in 3 days. Apologized. Sent over every email. Every text Cindy had written. Said she hadn't known the sale was illegal. Said she'd trusted Cindy's story. That the marriage was over. That the husband was gone. That the property had already been signed over. I printed everything. The timelines matched. The texts. The property dates. The emails sent 3 days before I was told to pack my things. A paper trail of premeditated fraud. Staged like a bad play. Built on the assumption that I'd leave quietly and never look back. But I did look back. And now the whole production was falling apart. Cindy's lawyer, the slick one, emailed me directly next. Offered a private resolution, a gentle exit. If I'd agree to drop any mention of the will's conditions and sign a clean dissolution agreement with a non-disparagement clause. I didn't respond. My attorney did. "Mr. Vance declines." Please proceed formally through probate. That's when Cindy finally called. Not to explain. To threaten. You're dragging this into the dirt, she snapped. It was clean. It was done. You're the one who's ruining it. I put her on speaker. Recorded it. Said nothing. You want to play victim now? She continued. After everything I put up with? After raising those kids like they were yours? There it was. The line she thought would hurt me. She didn't know it did. But not for the reason she wanted. It hurt because it was the truth. Because I had raised them like they were mine. And now I was finally seeing what that meant. I hung up. Silence. Then I filed a motion for full discovery of all estate transactions made after John Kramer's death. My role as observer gave me the right. Cindy's lawyer tried to challenge it. The court declined. The cracks weren't just showing anymore. They were wide enough to fall through. The first knock came at 1:14 a.m. 3 sharp raps. Then silence. I didn't move from the bed. Just sat there, eyes open in the dark, waiting. The motel's AC unit clicked softly in the corner. The air smelled like rust and bleach. Another knock. Same pattern. Not urgent. Not hesitant. I opened the door without speaking. No one there. Just an envelope tucked under the floor mat. I didn't pick it up. I photographed it first, both sides. Then I slid on gloves and placed it inside a freezer bag. Slipped it into the motel fridge between 2 cans of off-brand cola. When I opened it the next morning, I already knew what I'd find. A blurry printout. My face. My car. A typed note. You're not invisible. Stay gone. That was the first documented threat. It wouldn't be the last. Cindy had never been subtle. Not when angry. But this was different. Not her voice, not her words. Hired hands, digital shadows, amateur intimidation. That made it worse, not because it was dangerous, but because it was stupid. The kind of chaos people reach for when their masks begin to slip. I forwarded the photo to my attorney. He told me not to respond. Not to retaliate. Just to log it. So I did. Every message. Every blocked call. Every weird vehicle in the motel lot that hadn't been there the day before. I kept records the way I used to keep receipts for groceries and school supplies. Methodically, dispassionately, as if order could outlast betrayal. I bought a second security camera for the room. Installed it myself. Small. Battery-powered. I also informed motel management. The night clerk raised an eyebrow when I mentioned a restraining order might be incoming. He gave me a different room. No questions asked. I started to notice patterns. The messages came in waves, usually after a court filing. Anytime we gained ground, the noise returned. First anonymous texts, then spoofed calls from fake agencies. King County Family Services was one. Another claimed to be a detective following up on an incident report. But they never left case numbers. Never gave names. Just pressure. Just smoke. The motel's front desk called me twice about complaints. Sir, someone reported a disturbance in your room. No sound. No issue. But 3 different times someone tried to get management to knock, to enter, to check on me. It was Cindy. Not directly, but through people she could manipulate. People who believed her version of the story. And that version was crumbling. The companion she brought to probate? Her advisor? Gone. Her social media posts, once filled with smiling brunches and inspirational quotes, started to vanish. One by one. First the photos with me. Then the photos with her friends. Then the photos with her kids. She was rewriting her history in real time. And she wasn't subtle about it. I got a message from a former friend of hers. A woman named Laura. We'd only met a few times. She was quiet, sharp, too sharp to stay fooled. She wrote, I don't know what's going on, but Cindy's telling people you stole money, that you forged court documents, that you used her father's death to attack her. If you need a witness, I'm available. That was when I knew her image was slipping. People who once defended her were now staying quiet. People who once echoed her stories were deleting their comments. It was my first taste of air in weeks. I didn't gloat. I didn't message her. I didn't leak anything. I just tightened the net. Each screenshot added to the folder. Each message, labeled. Dates, times, sources. I wasn't building a case to destroy her. I was building a fortress to keep her out. One morning, I got a call from the Lake Sammamish realtor, the woman who'd unknowingly participated in the fraudulent sale. She was crying. She said Cindy had promised to fix it quietly, but now the buyer was threatening to sue her, said the deposit was never returned, that Cindy stopped answering calls, that she'd ghosted everyone. I told the realtor to speak to the estate directly, gave her the number. She thanked me like I'd thrown her a life raft. Another wall reinforced. My attorney filed a notice with the court that day, submitted all updated evidence, threats, harassment, failed sale, attempts to tamper with probate. We weren't asking for punitive action. Not yet. We were documenting patterns. We were showing escalation. That's when her lawyer blinked. 2 days later, we received an email. Effective immediately, my office is withdrawing from representation. Ms. Kramer will be seeking alternative counsel. No explanation, no apology, just abandonment. Even the professionals were walking away. I imagined the silence in her house that night, the same silence I'd sat with in that motel room. But for her, it wouldn't be peace. It would be vacuum, a collapse of certainty. Because when people who once believed you begin to retreat, you start to hear your own voice echo back differently. Less powerful, less persuasive, more desperate. I wasn't celebrating her fall. I just finally felt the ground return beneath my feet. Then came the final shift, the moment I reclaimed the narrative completely. It wasn't dramatic. It was a meeting. A school board conference in a beige room with folding chairs and stale coffee. I'd been attending those meetings for years. Always quiet, always supportive. I was the man who nodded when teachers talked, who brought extra pens, who volunteered for the fundraiser when no one else would. And Zach, her son from a previous marriage, had always sat beside me. Never with me, just beside. This time he sat on the opposite end. And when my name came up, listed as an emergency contact as a guardian on 3 of the forms, he stood up. Right there, in front of the board, the parents, the teachers. He stood up and said, "He's nobody to us. He doesn't belong here." No shouting, just loud enough for everyone to hear. And Cindy, seated 2 rows behind him, didn't flinch. She didn't stop him, didn't interrupt, didn't apologize. She just watched. And that silence said more than any insult ever could. I stood up, walked calmly to the admin table, asked to review the student files. I sat down, crossed out my name on every form. Slowly, clearly, no drama. Each stroke of the pen was a quiet declaration. I'm not fighting for a place I was never given. 5 minutes later, the school secretary stepped into the hallway and asked, voice low, unsure, "So, who's signing permissions now?" No one answered. Not Cindy, not Zach, no one. That was the moment the house collapsed. Because it wasn't about money anymore, or property, or inheritance. It was about ownership of the story, and I had taken it back. Not with fire, not with fury, with structure, with silence, with the refusal to keep playing a role in someone else's fiction. That night, I left the school without looking back. Drove to the motel, sat on the edge of the bed, opened the laptop, logged in to every shared account I still had access to, school apps, family scheduling platforms, the digital architecture of fatherhood. I removed my name from everything, not out of spite, out of necessity. If I wasn't family in name or heart, then I wouldn't be family in data. I deleted the old shared calendar, the one that had all the pickup times, the recitals, the dentist appointments. Erased it. I closed the laptop and sat still. No one called. Not Cindy, not Zach, not even the school. The silence was total. And in that silence, I found something I hadn't tasted in years. Not peace, not vindication, just freedom. The last meeting wasn't meant to be a confrontation. It was scheduled like all the others had been. Late in the evening, multipurpose room, rows of 2 small chairs pulled from classrooms, coffee burned down to bitterness in a silver urn by the wall, a monthly check-in, curriculum updates, Funding discussions. Parent volunteers. I almost didn't go. The week had already been long court filings. Another letter from the estate trustee. More silence from Cindy's side. The motel walls had started to close in again, and I had spent the better part of Thursday staring at old drafts of letters I never sent. Apologies I thought I owed. Final explanations that no one had asked for. But routine is a hard thing to abandon. I'd been attending these meetings for 6 years. I knew the board members by name. I knew who handled snack signups. I knew the maintenance guy who came in to adjust the thermostat halfway through. I went because I was expected, because no one else ever volunteered. I went because it used to mean something, so I put on a sweater and showed up. The chairs squeaked. The whiteboard was smudged from the last math lesson held in the room. A child's drawing, crayon scrawled, sun with smiling teeth, still hung on the wall. The meeting began without ceremony. Cindy came in 20 minutes late. Zach followed, slouching, hands shoved in his hoodie pocket like the weight of the world was in there. They didn't sit beside me. I didn't expect them to, but I didn't expect what came next either. The principal, Mr. Levins, was reviewing updates on student emergency contacts, part of a district-wide overhaul of forms. Standard procedure. A clipboard was passed around, and parents were asked to confirm or correct listed information. When it reached Zach, he didn't even look down. He handed it back and stood up. No one called on him. He just stood, turned, faced the room, and said, "He's nobody to us. He doesn't belong here." That's all. 9 words, but each one landed like a verdict. The room went still, the kind of stillness that bends time. Plastic chairs creaked. A spoon clinked against a paper cup. Somewhere in the hallway, a janitor's cart rolled past. I didn't say a word. I looked at Cindy. She didn't blink, didn't reach for him, didn't shake her head, didn't offer a hushed correction. She just sat, perfectly composed, as if the script had been rehearsed and this was just the delivery. I stood slowly, walked to the administration table. "May I see the forms?" I asked. The secretary looked at me, uncertain. She hesitated, then handed me the clipboard. I flipped through until I found Zach's section. My name was still listed: emergency contact, field trip permission, pickup authorization, medication consent. I took the pen beside the clipboard, and I crossed out every line with my name. Deliberate, clear, permanent. I handed the clipboard back and returned to my seat. For the next 12 minutes, I didn't move. The meeting resumed, but no one really listened. The temperature in the room had shifted. Everyone had heard what was said. Everyone had seen what wasn't answered. When the meeting adjourned, I didn't linger. But as I passed the secretary in the hallway, she leaned in, quietly, almost like an afterthought, and asked, "So, who's signing permissions now?" I didn't reply. There was no answer to give. Back in the motel, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't open the laptop. I sat in the corner chair and stared at the bag I still hadn't unpacked. The same folded jeans, the same spare charger, the book I'd pretended to read for 3 weeks. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel grief. I felt absence, like something had been cauterized. The next day, I received an email from the school district, a formal acknowledgement of my removal as guardian. Polite, emotionless, legally sound. My access to parent portals was revoked. My login credentials were deactivated. The digital footprint of fatherhood wiped clean. The same week, Cindy filed a revised separation agreement. No alimony, no apology, no property settlement because there was no property to divide. Everything had come from her father. Everything she now stood to lose if she made another mistake. She offered a clean break. No contact, no claim, just a quiet disappearance. My attorney told me it was favorable, that I could walk away intact, that the will had done its job, shielded me from retaliation, preserved what little remained. He didn't ask how it felt. He didn't have to, because in that moment, I realized something terrifying in its simplicity. I was free, not triumphant, not vindicated, just free. There were no more obligations, no more forms to fill, No more silent drives to school drop-offs where the car was always too quiet. No more questions about why my name didn't match the last name on the locker. No more dinners where thanks was just a rumor. It was over. I went to the bank, closed the joint account, had my name removed from the utilities, forwarded my mail, canceled the shared streaming accounts, erased the digital breadcrumbs that had kept me tethered to a house where I'd never truly been invited. And then I did one final thing. I wrote a letter, not to them, to myself. A letter I would never send. A letter I needed to write just once to make it real. Michael, you stayed too long. Not because you were weak, because you hoped too deeply. You thought love was something you could earn. That showing up, paying the bills, fixing the car, carrying the weight without complaint. That all of it would buy you a seat at the table. Didn't. You were never seen. Only used. But now you are no longer required to play a role that was never written for you. Let the silence stand. Let the door stay closed. You are not unfinished. You are not unwanted. You were just miscast. And now the stage is empty. Let it stay that way. I folded the letter and sealed it in an envelope with no name. Left it in the nightstand drawer of the motel before checking out. A ghost for the next traveler. A map with no directions. I didn't look back when I drove away. Didn't turn on the radio. Didn't stop for coffee. Just drove until the mountains swallowed the skyline and the road no longer looked familiar. I don't know where Zach is now. Whether he got into college. Whether he ever wonders why the man who coached his science fair project never came back. I doubt it. His words at that meeting were too clean. Too practiced. That kind of cruelty doesn't just appear. It's grown, nurtured, approved. And Cindy? I imagine she tells people I left. That I cracked under pressure. That I couldn't handle the stress, the kids, the expectations. She'll say I was cold, distant, maybe even unstable. And maybe she's right, because I did leave. I left the moment I realized I'd built my entire life on a foundation that belonged to someone else. I'd paid for the lights in a house that saw me as a shadow. I'd filled the fridge in a kitchen where my plate was always a courtesy, never a right. And I stayed. God help me, I stayed because I believed it would change. That love, like concrete, would set in time. But it didn't. Some things never set. They just crack. And when they do, you have two choices. Patch them, or walk away. I walked. Not because I was cruel, but because I finally understood something no one had ever said out loud. There is no prize for staying unloved. There is no medal for being the quiet man at the table who pays and prays and disappears. So now I ask you, whoever you are, if a child stood in a room full of strangers and declared you were nothing to him, and his mother said nothing to stop it, would you have stayed? Would you have kept signing the forms? Kept writing the checks? Kept wearing the mask of a father, knowing no one would notice if you never came home again? Tell me, what would you have done?